did that performance and that block say to you about Kawhi Leonard?
If you're trying to win a championship, he's your number one pick. In other words, he's the best player in basketball. People get confused about this because he didn't start as the best player in basketball. Because LeBron James's game on offense is more well-rounded than Kawhi's. He's a genius-level passer, whereas Kawhi went from a guy who didn't pass the ball to a guy who wasn't very good at it to a guy who's pretty good at it for his position now, but not on the level of LeBron James. But people forget, this has been the history of the NBA. Way back in the day before Jordan was the GOAT. You know, now this guy who just scores like that and plays defense, he can't win the championship. He's not as good as Bird and Magic. Look at their offense. They're geniuses. They see the whole floor. They're more well-rounded. Even if you're a one-trick pony, which Jordan obviously wasn't, neither is Kawhi, boy, if that's a tough trick to beat, you're still the best. But that's just on offense that LeBron has a more well-rounded game, you could argue, because of the passing. There's also defense, and where LeBron is a great defender and underrated, Kawhi is on a short list for best defensive player who ever lived. So there's also that, and then there's also clutch performance. Kawhi Leonard, as great as he is normally, consistently, throughout his career, since he was 22 years old, getting the MVP in the finals for playing defense on LeBron, and people forget, no, he didn't have the offensive burden of the team, Stephen A., but he was scoring 20-plus as that series went on, as a puppy, as a baby. Kawhi has always managed to get to be a better version of himself when his team needs him most. He was not great last night, but he was great when he needed to be. If you want to win a championship, Kawhi is your guy. That's why he's the best player in basketball.
Well, we disagree, but nothing else is new there. You're caught up on Kawhi Leonard. We'll see. I still believe the best player in the world is LeBron James. Having said all of that, Kawhi Leonard, middle finger blocking the basketball, a dunk by Jamal Murray notwithstanding, the player of the game was Paul George. We were critical of him. More than a week ago, he admitted that he just wasn't there, that psychologically, emotionally, whatever the case may be, there was something missing. But clearly, he has made amends. Clearly, he showed up last night, hit 12 of 18 shots, 5 3-pointers, 5 of 7 3-pointers. He was sensational last night. Oh, by the way, on both ends of the floor as well. And so I think when you're thinking about the Clippers, if you're pointing out about how they won Game 3 last night, you need to look no further than Paul George, because when Paul George is playing like that, that's why we view the Los Angeles Clippers as favorites to win the chip, because of somebody like Paul George. We know Kawhi can do his thing. He's a superstar, make no mistake about it. I'm not trying to deny that, but he needs Paul George, no mistake. And Paul George showed up last night and showed up in a big way. The other thing I think was to the Clippers' advantage, they really turned on the motors. They were down 97-90, and then after that, they went on a 14-4 run. They really clamped down defensively after Doc Rivers called the timeout. And let's give credit where credit is due. They just have that next gear defensively, and particularly against a Denver Nuggets team that were in sore need of Jamal Murray showing up and exploding the way he did against Utah. That has not been the case thus far, at least in 2 of the 3 games, number one. And number two, Denver's relatively young. They're still learning as we go along. You need evidence taken into account when they had stripped Donovan Mitchell in Game 7 of the first round series. And instead of just holding the ball, getting fouled, and going to the free throw line, they ran up court and tried to make a layup and missed it, and actually gave Utah another shot at winning Game 7 before Mike Conley Jr. missed the 3 at the buzzer in order for Denver to survive. Denver's a young team. They make mistakes. They'll be better. I think they're going to win a championship one day, because this kid, Michael Porter Jr., is special. He had 18 points last night, shooting 8 of 17 from the field. But just watch his game, his size. If this dude's back can stay healthy, this brother's got poise and he's got game. And him with Murray, with the Joker, Denver's got an incredibly, incredibly bright future. They've just run into a team that's just too experienced, too seasoned, too well coached, with too many dogs in order for this young, talented team to take the Clippers out. That's really what the problem is, and that's how the Clippers benefited last night, because Denver was a relatively young team.
Yeah, Denver, I don't think is ready to beat the Clippers, but I always thought this would be a series. And after game one, when everyone was writing Denver off, to me, that just looked like a schedule loss. You know, they just came off a grueling 7-game series. The Clippers were more rested. To the Clippers' credit, they took care of business. Of course, they had to face a depleted Mavs team without Porzingis for a lot of those games. And whereas, obviously, Denver was coming off a brutal slugfest with Utah. But still, that's as close as you're going to get to a schedule loss in the bubble when there's not travel and road games and stuff. And then in game 2, Jamal Murray put Kawhi on skates. Let's not forget that. And that went around social media, and it made Kawhi look bad because forget about an overall game. We live in a clickbait culture where those kind of moments and those images will live in people's minds. And so when Kawhi was embarrassed like that in that moment, to come back and block a shot on that same player to seal a win with his middle finger could not be more symbolic, because Kawhi, as quiet as he is, silent assassin and everything, has been doing that middle finger thing to the league for a while. He's the top dog. He's the alpha. And he shows it, including by spurning the Lakers offer. Hey, we cleared all this cap room. Well, I'm saying he leaves. He wins Finals MVP when he's 22 years old. He beefs with Popovich and the handling, whoever does that, and the handling of his injury. He goes to Toronto and wins a chip. He's courted by the Lakers. We cleared the decks for you. Come and join LeBron's team. He's like, I'm not joining LeBron's team. I'm making my team, and I'm going at LeBron in that same building because that's my building. That's what Kawhi's been doing. You put him on skates game 2, game 3, you get the finger at the end of the game to block the shot and seal the win. He is not playing games.
Thanks for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming, sports, and premium content, subscribe to ESPN+.